Welcome back to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast, and we are on episode 3 in the mini-series with Robin around objections. We've spoken already, if you've not checked them out. Episode 1, how to deal with fob-offs and smoke screens. Episode 2, how to deal with objections that come up later on in the sales process. But on this episode, we're probably going to be a bit of a counterintuitive one, so we're going to be talking about objection prevention. So we've spoken about how to deal with them when they do come up, but actually there can be a little bit of merit and logic in trying to prevent them from coming up in the first place. So Robin, over to you. What is objection prevention, or preventing objections coming up in the first place? What's that all about?
There's an elephant in the room.
There's
an elephant in the room. Yeah, you're thinking it, I'm thinking it, we all know it. One of us has got to say it. It's probably not going to be the customer, right? So so objection prevention or inoculation is it's pretty much what the label suggests. It's preventing the objection from coming up in the first place. It's taking that bullet out of that person's chamber. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to get there first and embrace it, and call it for what it is, so that it doesn't take anyone by surprise. And it shows an awful lot of empathy when you can call out what someone else is thinking, particularly if they're afraid to say it. So if someone's thinking, oh God, this seems like it's going to be really expensive. It's a lot of money. I can't tell Kyle because he'll hit me with that money objection, won't he? So you hold on to these kind of unspoken objections, and if I call it out, I'll go, it's a lot of money, isn't it, Kyle? It's like, you get me. So we're going to go over some techniques, I think, to help people prevent those ghastly objections from coming up.
We are indeed, and this, I think, for a lot of salespeople will feel really counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It almost maybe goes against what we feel is natural. Why does bringing up objections, like the one you just mentioned, it's quite a lot of money, isn't it? You might think it's quite expensive.
Yeah.
Why does it work? Why is it so powerful?
So it means that if you can learn to both use objections to your advantage, but also prevent them from coming up, it just means you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble at the back end of the call or the back end of the process, particularly if it's a long sales cycle, of being hit with a budget objection that you kind of knew was going to come up because someone had said something earlier, or you didn't ask that question, or you didn't get there and qualify in that way. So it's just helpful to get everyone's cards on the table, because this is collaborative. I'm not trying to trick you. This is all about sharing knowledge and building trust. And the best way you can do that is just by being really transparent. But I get that you're probably not going to be transparent about your objections to me. So I'll do that for you. I'll bring them out and I'll say, hey, look, is this an objection that you might have? And you're right, a lot of people are scared. Like, well, what if I put the idea in their mind? I'm like, trust me, bro, it's already there. You're not going to do any harm by calling out an objection early.
Yeah, we've had it before in our business, and maybe asking the question, who else have you worked with? Who else have you spoken to? And like, oh, what if I give them the idea to go and speak to other people? It's like, no, that was probably something that was happening already anyway. So you mentioned then some techniques on how to prevent objections from coming up. What are some of the tips, tricks, techniques you can share to execute this idea?
Yeah. So I think one of the easiest ways for people to start preventing objections is to get really comfortable asking them as part of the discovery process. So using questions to determine, who they're speaking to. For example, if you're in a recruitment role, like, okay, I assume you've already got some recruiters that you're working with. I assume you've already negotiated some pretty attractive fees with them, so you can use them in part of the discovery process, that you don't get, battened down later on. But there's also a technique that when you get a bit more aware of who you're talking to, and it's more technical, is to label the objection from a third-party point of view. So, for example, I might need an example for this. What's an objection we can work with?
We wanted later stage objection.
Yeah.
Let's use the next quarter or next year or later on in the year.
Cool.
Let's go with
that kind of like fob off one.
Yeah.
Right? So you might be thinking, like, how can I prevent someone from wanting to think about it? You haven't mentioned anything yet. I don't want to give you the idea to do it. What kind of question can I ask to say, are you going to want to think about this next quarter? That doesn't really work. So I go to this dissociation technique where I'll say throughout the conversation, when I've got a bit of rapport with you, I like the conversation with Carl, because sometimes I speak with some sales directors that they just want to push things off all the time, like they want to wait like next quarter whenever they talk. And I guess what they don't realise is when they do that, the problem isn't going to fix itself. They actually cost their business a lot of money. Anyway, and then I'll move on to another question. And there's lots of little kind of like subtle hints I can do. Now, you don't want to be associated with that, particularly if I say competitors, or if I describe people in a way that I know that you don't want to be seen as. So it's getting technical now, right? But let's say I know that you see yourself in your organizations as pretty innovative. I will associate non-innovative people as using that objection. So I'll go, I really like how innovative you are, because I always find that people who aren't forward-thinking, they're the people who just push things off. They say, I had one last week that said they wanted to review this next year. I know they're not coming back to me, and I'm totally fine with it, but they're just not very innovative, are they? People who think that way. And then I'll just carry on the conversation. It makes it a little bit difficult now later on for you to say, I want to think about it, because it will create that cognitive dissonance, which is where you're saying something like, it doesn't sit right with who I am. So it's a little bit more advanced, but if you can find a way to I can address the objection without attacking you. I'm just attacking the objection before it's even come up. So that's another technique. It's a bit more technical than doing it if you can't. But people just starting out, find questions to dissolve those objections in the discovery.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think technical is good, advanced is good, because there'd probably be AEs or soon to be AEs that are probably listening to this, maybe in longer sales cycles, that could definitely utilize something like that. In episode 1, we talked around like the fob offs and the smoke screens. What tips or tricks have you got to maybe bring out those objections early on, as opposed to the more advanced stuff?
Like ones that might appear on like a cold call or something? Or?
Yeah. Not interested, meeting, email. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Because they come quite early on. How can we maybe get first to those objections?
Yeah. Same strategy applies. Get to it first so that you're not then reacting to the objection. So let's take someone like send me an email objection. I'll use something a bit like a Vossian accusation audit and say, look, you're probably going to ask me to send you an email. So before I do that, now I can address whatever I wanted to do. So now that we've put that objection that you're thinking just to one side, I haven't kind of dismissed it. I'm kind of working with it, but I'm able to not use that as a roadblock. I'm just kind of putting that roadblock aside and just still having that conversation with you and saying, look, we'll come back to that if it's relevant. So now when they hit me, can you send me an email? They're now not objecting to me. They're just mentioning something that I anticipated. So we're just collaborating. Yeah, okay, cool, we can do that. Because I knew you was going to say that because I said it first. That's kind of the mentality. So again, with people wanting to go to a meeting, hey, look, you're probably on your way into a meeting, so I'll make this brief. Okay, it's these, this is probably the situation. And if you're wrong, people will either correct you or they'll just let it go by.
Yeah, interesting. How would you, kind of final piece on this, how would you advise or encourage salespeople to get into the habit of trying to get to the objections first? Because again, it feels really counterintuitive for a lot of people. It doesn't feel natural. So what advice would you give, more so probably from a mindset shift?
That's a good question. I mean, I think you've got to have reasonable suspicion that that objection is going to surface, because you can't prevent an objection that isn't on the horizon. And you can't do it with every objection, because you'll just spend ages preventing objections which don't exist. So I think you've got to have, this is where your emotional intelligence comes into play, where you're listening. Someone says during a call that they're going through a restructure, that should probably think, okay, there might be some hesitation there to implement new tools or whatever. So you got to listen for like, do I reasonably suspect this objection might come up, and only prevent those ones. So I think to come back to your question, I think that if people can learn to sort of embrace the objections, the mindset shift is that they're only an objection when they hit you. But if you're reaching out for them and you're grabbing them first, they're just a talking point, a very natural talking point that you've anticipated. And it's like the old saying, like prevention is better than cure. So if you're reacting, even if you've got the perfect talk track and the tonality and everything that we spoke about in the last couple of episodes, you're still on the back foot. You're still reacting. And there's still going to be some tension and some friction in the conversation. Whereas if I mention it first and say something like, I imagine you have to feed this up the chain and get other people sort of involved. I'm sure you've got a say in what happens. And I can target that I need to speak to someone, objection. But now I'm in control of it because I've taken that objection and I've brought it into my realm rather than you using it as a weapon. I don't mean to sound so aggressive, but you using it as an objection. It's just a conversation point. So I think that's stop seeing them as objections. Start seeing them as just concerns that you had the empathy and emotional intelligence to see first, and your prospects will really respect you for it.
Love it. Prevention is better than cure as well. That was a great statement. Robin, pleasure again. Salespeople, get to the objections first. Thank you for listening.